Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Committee of Adjustment, and we will start with let me get organized here. 149, 151 Ontario Street North and 21 Weber Street West. Anyone who is in support or opposition, please come forward. Good morning. I see we have the applicant and someone who is opposed. For the record, can you please state your names?
Scott Patterson, LaBreche Patterson and Associates, here in support.
My name is Joe Guzzi. I'm with Dillon Consulting, representing the adjacent property owner in opposition.
Okay. I'm assuming the applicant has read the staff report?
Yes, we have read the staff report. No concerns with what's being written. Confirming for the committee that we are proposing a modification to have all units in the building being 51 square meters or less, which changes the parking requirement to only be 23 parking spaces for the development. The original staff report had noted a modification from 87 spaces down to 0, and the modification changes that to 23 spaces down to 0.
Okay. This application came before this committee back in May and was deferred. Maybe you can very quickly walk us through this application. It's a fairly comprehensive one.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So yes, the project is a 126 unit residential building, mixed-use building at the corner of Ontario and Weber Street. As noted, we were before the committee previously seeking a parking reduction for this site that matched the new City of Kitchener parking regulations for the downtown or urban growth center zones. And as noted, at that time, the staff report alluded to a reduction from 87 spaces down to 0. The staff report at that time also noted that the landowner may consider making all the units in the building being 51 square meters or less, which dramatically reduces the parking rate that's required for the site. We can confirm, and as noted in the revised staff report, that is the situation we're proposing, is to reduce all units to 51 square meters. There are credits available on site for parking and other things given the existing buildings. So the reduction is 23 spaces down to 0. And the new City of Kitchener zoning bylaw for parking in that area would support that and would allow that for the development to go forward. And we understand that the gentlemen here today and their group have appealed that at the city level for the city's zoning bylaw as well. So if there's any questions or concerns, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay. At this point, we'll hear from the other side to see what your concerns are.
Mr. Chair, I represent the adjacent property owner. It is at 17 Weber Street. It is a building that's currently used as an office. It's the legal firm of Schuh Klein Grossman, and they've occupied the property for over 30 years. My client has significant concerns regarding the proposed development, especially given that no parking is being provided on site whatsoever. The application, in our opinion, is that the four tests of the Plan Act have not been met, and that this application should be denied. First, the application is not minor in nature. The applicant is asking for a substantial relief, providing 0 parking on the property, which means that there will be 0 parking for residents, visitors, as well as that there are no provision for barrier-free parking spaces. This means that residents in the area will be using the street for parking and adjacent areas. And my client's concern is that, given that he is located directly next door, having 126 parking units would put demand on illegal parking and create undue conditions on his property. Currently, illegal parking already occurs on my client's property, and with these additional units, the problem will just become grander. The nature of my client's business, his law practice is such that many of its clients have mobility issues. And illegal parking on his lot in the area and poor circulation in the neighborhood will negatively affect his very vulnerable clients. It's our position that the failure to provide even one barrier-free parking spot in any new development is exclusionary for persons with disabilities and mobility issues, and to exclude any member of the public is not acceptable. It does not represent good planning and is not in the public interest. Also, with reference to the new bylaw that the city has passed but is under appeal, bylaw 2019-51, should not be used as further direction or consideration when it's under appeal by many members. It's not in effect, and to rely on it when the bylaw could change because there are some serious concerns with regards with how barrier-free parking is established in that bylaw. Further, the application, in our opinion, is not appropriate or desirable for the development of the area. The inability to provide on-site parking, not even one barrier-free parking spot, on a lot that is too small, irregular in shape, constrained by the heritage feature, only accentuates the fact that we believe the proposed development represents overdevelopment of the property. The proposed development is also not very respectful of the heritage buildings on the property. The streets surrounding the site are narrow, there's limited space, and they will be competing for pickup, drop-off, deliveries, and will conflict with any emergency vehicles that may be required, and is not ideal for people with disabilities in the area. Further, the massing and size of the building as proposed will have negative impacts on our client's property. Its upper floor windows and skylights will be impacted by overlook and shadowing, and this portion of the building contains some of the most important rooms in the office, which includes boardrooms and meeting rooms. And finally, we believe that the application is not in keeping for the purpose and intent of the zoning bylaw. The bylaw intends to allow for development that will not negatively impact its surrounding areas. Providing 0 parking spaces for residents, visitors, and no protection for a barrier-free parking space is not in keeping with the purpose and intent of the zoning bylaw. And it is our submission that the tests of the Planning Act have not been met and that this application should be denied. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question for staff for some clarification, and then I will open it up to the other members of this committee. What I see we have here is a transition from bylaw 85-1 to the new Crosby. Under the previous bylaw, the applicant would have been allowed to have the height of the building they're proposing, but would have required parking, on-site parking. Under the new Crosby, they can have 0 parking, but they are restricted in height to about 2/3, roughly, of what the applicant is requesting. I choose my words carefully here. I see a bit of a problem in picking the best of the previous bylaw and combining it with the best of the current or the new upcoming bylaw, and I think that could potentially set a precedent. I know in this committee we take each individual application separately, but people being what people are, they will see a very large variance on height and or parking, whichever bylaw you choose. So I have a bit of a problem with that. Having said that, I will now turn it over to the committee to see if they have any questions or comments.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for both the gentleman opposed and the applicant, and then I have some comments to make as well. To the gentleman opposed, were you or your firm representing the folks that appealed the overall zoning for the downtown parking?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. To the applicant, would you be opposed, because you made it very clear that your client has reduced the size of the units to a second condition, if we were to support this, that all the proposed dwelling units are less than 51 square meters in size?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we'd be in full support of that condition should it be imposed for the project.
Thank you. If others have questions, maybe they can go first, but I do have comments as well.
Sir, are you a planner? Just curious what your area of expertise is.
Yes, I am a planner.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, there were some comments you made about what would be permitted on this site under Crosby in terms of height and density. I would like some further explanation of that, if I can, from staff. It's not apparent to me from reading the staff report.
Through you, Mr. Chair, under the Crosby zoning bylaw that was drafted for this property but has since been deferred, the maximum height that we identified was 12 stories, or a maximum floor space ratio of 6. Since that time that those bylaw regulations were drafted, there has been changes to the Planning Act, including changes to Section 37 with respect to bonusing. The UGC zoning largely relied on additional height and density being afforded through bonusing, and such we've deferred the application of all of those zones, and we'll have to be taking a second look about how we regulate height and density within the downtown.
I understand. So through you, Mr. Chair, a follow-up question then. Regardless of what the ultimate height of the proposed structure will be on this particular property, 0 parking spaces times that is 0 parking spaces.
That is correct, through the chair. Section 5 of the new zoning bylaw was approved by council, and it has been appealed, so those sections will move forward in some form as part of the LPAT hearing. However, the actual application of those zones and those regulations would not apply to the urban growth center because the base zone is not in place. So this variance is required because this application would be wholly considered under bylaw 85-1.
And in terms of the appeal, how many people have appealed the parking provisions, and was the property owners at 17 Weber an appellant? Are they an appellant?
Through the chair, that is my understanding. There's 3 appellants, 3 different issues. I wouldn't want to provide any further comment until that is scoped by the LPAT and we know exactly which issues are under appeal, but there are 3 appellants currently to zoning bylaw 2018-051.
And one more question, thank you. The issue of barrier-free parking, will there be, and just accessibility generally, I know this will be subject to site plan. Can you comment on how accessibility and barrier-free parking will be addressed?
Yes, so we would follow a similar circumstances we did with other sites where there's restrictions to providing on-street parking. For example, this building and Duke Street outside of the new provincial courthouse, barrier-free parking is actually provided within the right-of-way. It's signed and regulated and enforced by the city's, enforced by law enforcement. We would be looking at a similar situation here for both barrier-free and loading. And that is something that we're reviewing as part of the site plan procedure. The further refinement of that has not been explored at this time because we have not progressed with the site plan application or review of that application pending the outcome of this hearing.
I have a comment, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay. Okay. When this comes forward, I'm going to be supportive of the application, and I'm actually going to move it with that second condition, but just to provide some basis for it. The applicant has done exactly what we asked him to do. I remember this application back in May, and I was thinking to myself, why are we even dealing with this when council is dealing with this new parking ratios? So, in fact, the applicant waited for the new parking ratio to be considered by council. Council did approve it. Unfortunately, it was appealed. If it hadn't been appealed, this application wouldn't be here. In other words, the application would be fully compliant with the zoning bylaw. And I guess when I'm done here, I'll ask staff to just confirm that. So what the applicant has actually done, too, is beneficial to the applicant, or application in my mind, because they've reduced the parking or the size of the units to very, very small units, so that we're not going to be having people jammed into these units. You're probably going to have one person, singles. So the fact that they reduced the variance, I think, from 80-something down to 23 is also supportive from my perspective. So again, that's my basis for why I'm going to support this application. I think the applicant has done exactly what we wanted to do, and I think if we do approve it, the fellow that's opposed in front of us will probably appeal, and there'll be a consolidated hearing, and I'm happy with that too.
I generally agree with my colleague in terms of the emerging regulatory regime. I would note that there is case law out there where the OMB and probably the LPAD have indicated that bylaws under appeal remain mere conjecture, and there is possibility that they will change through the appeals, the 3 appeals that are out there. It's not clear if those appeals are directly related to parking, but as Mr. Hanna indicated, there is a right of appeal for this and consolidation, so it could all be brought together. I don't think I was here for when this first came forward in May. I probably would have suggested that a parking study be done under the existing zoning bylaw, but given that this is the direction that the committee took the applicant in, and it seems to have the support of the rest of the committee, I will also support the application with the additional condition.
Is that a motion from the...
Can I make that a motion, Mr. Chairman, that the staff recommendation, we support the application based on the staff recommendation with the addition of condition 2 that all proposed dwelling units are less than 51 square meters in size.
Is there a seconder for that? Okay, we have a motion on the floor as amended. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Could Mr. Hanna repeat the second condition that we wanted?
Scott?
Certainly. So condition 2 would be that all proposed dwelling units are less than 51 square meters in size.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, moving along to the rest of the agenda. We're dealing now with application A2019-083, 103 Simeon Street. Anyone in support or opposition, please come forward. Good morning, and for the record, can we have your name, sir?
Devin Wagler.
Okay. Have you read the staff report?
Yeah.
Any comments on that?
No, looks good to me. Yeah.
I am pleased to see that there's not much to deal with here. The building permit has been applied for. There's no concerns from the region, no concerns from the GRCA. So I'll open it up to the committee to see if they have any questions or comments. Mr. Hanna.
Just a quick question for the applicant. I noticed on the survey you didn't have a rear yard dimension on the back of the house, but it looks as if you've kind of built in some flexibility for yourself with the dimensions. How did you go about determining that you needed 3.5 meters?
Oh, sorry, I'm not quite sure I understood the question.
So I'm looking at your survey that is attached, and there's no rear yard dimension. I've estimated it to be 22 feet. I was just wondering how you did your calculations.
How I actually got the size from the survey? You know what, it might be possible that I just covered it up. Like, I got those dimensions from the survey itself, as far as I can remember.
Okay. And just a second question to the applicant. Most of the time in the staff recommendations, they will put that it's to permit a one-story addition. You have no intentions of making this 2 stories, but I'm thinking about adding the words one-story addition to the recommendation.
Yeah, it's a 1-story.
You have no issue with that?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Do you know what the setback is of the existing one-story addition to the rear yard lot line?
I know it's approximately 2 feet shorter from the from the setback we're looking to achieve.
So it's not 7.5, it's something less than 7.5 today?
Oh, yes. Yeah, 7.5 is approximately halfway through our kitchen in the original house.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? You okay?
Mr. Chairman, I have no issue with the application. Looks like a lovely addition to the house. I would suggest, as a friendly amendment to the recommendation, that it read relief from Section 39.2.1 of the zoning bylaw to permit a one-story addition to have a rear yard. It's something that staff have consistently done, and you'll notice later on in the agenda they've done the same thing. So I'm prepared to move that.
Is there a seconder for that? So the motion is as amended. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Next application is A2019-084, 360 Louisa Street. Anyone in support or opposition to this application, please come forward. Good morning.
Morning.
For the record, can we have your name, please?
Yes, Emil Mrzliak with Lozani Homes.
Okay. Have you read the staff report?
Yes.
Do you have any questions or comments?
No, looks good.
Does the committee have any questions or comments? While they're thinking about that, I find, excuse me, this is pretty much to legalize an existing. You've applied for a building permit, and I consider the rear yard setback to be minor. So I would support this application. Does someone want to make a motion?
Mr. Chair, I will make that motion that this application be approved without condition. Oh, sorry, with conditions. No, no conditions.
No conditions.
Thank you.
A seconder? Mike? All in favor? That's carried. Next application is A2019-085, 6 Robert Peel Road. Anyone in support or opposition to this, please come forward. Recognize the face. Thank you very much. Have you read the staff report?
Yes.
Any questions or concerns?
No.
I consider this to be very, very minor. Difference between 4.34 meters or 5.34 meters and 5.5 is about that much. So this is very minor. Any questions, comments? Scott?
Mr. Chair, I think this is the most minor variance I've ever seen, and I'm prepared to move the staff recommendation.
Is there a seconder for that? Mike. All in favor? Carried. Next application is A2019-086, 8258 Edgewater Crescent. Anyone in support or opposition, please come forward. For the record, your name, sir?
Werner Leuschner.
Thank you. I actually have a question to staff, a fairly simple question. The green space behind this property, that's Walter Bean Trail, isn't it?
I don't know, sir.
Maybe the
I can answer you this if you want.
So
I say I can give you an answer to this if you want.
I missed that.
He said he can give you an answer.
Yes.
So behind this bush, there is no real trail. The trail is afterwards.
I guess my concern is in the long term, is there a potential for this green space to be developed?
Not likely.
No.
Not likely. Okay. My next comment is that as per the building comments and as we normally have been doing, I'd like to add a condition that the applicant apply for a building permit. Other than that, I'll pass this off to the committee.
Just have a couple of quick questions for the applicant. Do you have your survey sketch in front of you? I just wanted to ask you about that.
Yes.
So the way I'm reading it, I mean, the deck that exists today, the elevated deck with the patio kind of on top, it looks like, by what you've indicated here, it's 5 feet away from the rear property line. Is that correct?
No, the deck and the walkout basement patio is pretty close to the bush line. And this is all existing. I just purchased the house on August 1st, right? So the walkout patio for all the houses in the surrounding area, including the deck, is all very, very close to the bush.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand the actual dimensions, because you asked for .37 for kind of your sunroom addition. Can you explain how you're going to construct it? I would have thought you would have just enclosed the first story area below the deck.
It is exactly right. So everything is existing. I just put 3 walls there, enclose it, nothing else. I don't go further out or nothing. The existing thing will be 3 walls, and that's it.
Okay. I see staff wants to help me out here, so.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the bylaw distinguishes between an enclosed and an open patio area, and so that's what triggered the need for variances.
No, I completely understand that. It's just I'm trying to determine whether the .37 is appropriate or whether it shouldn't be closer to 1.5. Could staff, even though it's green space behind, could staff ask me whether, or respond whether or not there's a building code issue, because it will be glazed and it's only .3, and I thought the building code requirement was 1.2.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Building Department was circulated on the application. They've indicated no concerns with the application and did not require any special conditions as a result of their circulation. So I would think that there are no concerns based on that comment.
Just another quick question for the applicant. If it is in fact .37 meters, how are you going to maintain that addition?
I don't quite
Because
understand.
.37 is just a little over a foot.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I'm just curious as to where this addition is with respect to the neighbors and sight lines, and can you just confirm that the property line backs onto GRCA controlled floodplain, and that in fact there never will be any development? As I understand it, the Grand River is within sight of these properties, is it not?
No, the Grand River is far away, so you have to walk around 20 minutes to approach the river.
And to Scott's question, the rear face of the addition will be above ground level.
It's by the walkout basement, right? So there's a deck on top, and then you have a walkout basement where it's a concrete patio, and I just put 3 walls in to make a sunroom out of it.
I just have a couple comments. It looks like the side yard setback is 1.25. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so any fenestration between this building and the neighboring building will meet building code, and it backs onto a ravine, so there's no issues with fire code there.
Nope.
So how will you maintain it with a 1 meter setback? You'll be able to access it, get around the retaining wall and access the structure between you and, apparently it's not private space, it's public space on the other side of that retaining wall?
What do you mean public space?
It's owned by the city? Who owns the lands on the other side of the retaining wall?
I'm not 100% sure.
Mr. Chair, I have no concerns with this application. I think there's no building code issues. I understand what the applicant is doing. There'll be 1 foot maintenance space that will back onto a retaining wall type area, and I think that's sufficient for maintenance. I'm not sure I'm getting a clear answer on that, how the maintenance will work, but I'm prepared to support the application.
Just before we consider it, Mr. Chair, you've added the one condition about the building permit. I'm going to suggest a second condition just to be on the safe side. If the committee members would look at the photo, I think it's on page 2 of the report. In my mind, that existing deck, even the projection is a lot further away than 0.37 meters away from the property line. Those are 6-inch probably support posts. That's my guess. And I'm going to suggest a second condition that would read, because I think I've got it clear from the applicant that he doesn't intend to extend it beyond the existing deck, that the addition not extend beyond the existing elevated deck. That would be my suggestion for the second condition. Because I think without a survey, I think he's wrong with his dimensions.
So that's now 2 conditions?
If the committee is in agreement with that, I would suggest that second condition. I fully support your first condition.
Any further comments or questions? Is that a motion, Scott?
I'm prepared to move the application subject to or as amended, subject to those 2 conditions.
Seconder for that? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Scott, can you refresh the conditions,
Read
the
the
extra
conditions so that I can just write them down.
Yeah,
please.
condition 1, Mr. Chairman, was from yourself, and it was that a building permit be applied for. And number 2, that the addition not extend beyond the existing elevated deck.
I have a question to this. When I have done the minor variances, I was by the building permit and they told me, by the building department, they told me there is no building permit necessary because I just enclose something. So if you can remove this, this would be appreciated.
To the applicant, despite what the building department may have conveyed to you in the report, it does say that the building department is looking that you need to get a building permit. I don't think it would be a terribly onerous situation, seeing you're just enclosing, but you should, excuse me, you should contact the building department to clarify that.
Okay.
So all in favor? Did we do this? Okay. Carried.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on. Next application is A2019-087-119 George Street, St. George Street. Anyone in support or opposition, please come forward. And for the record, can you state your names, please?
Jeanette McNamara.
Noel McNamara.
Thank you. Have you read the staff report?
Yes.
Have any comments or questions on their recommendations?
No, we don't.
Okay. Seems fairly straightforward. Front yard setback is a very minor issue. And building permit, yes, I would like to add one condition that the applicant apply for a building permit. I will now pass this off to the committee for comments or questions. Scott.
Mr. Chairman, I think this is a very straightforward application, made with the benefit of a survey, I might add, and I fully support your conditions, so I'm prepared to move the application subject to the condition that a building permit be applied for.
Do we have a seconder for that? Mike. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Next application is A2019-088, 915 Chapel Hill Court. Anyone in support or opposition to this application, please come forward. Good morning. For the record, can you state your name, please?
Good morning. Andrea Sinclair. I'm with MHBC Planning.
Thank you. Have you had an opportunity to read the staff report?
I have, and I'm in support of staff's recommendation.
No questions or further comments? Okay. This looks fairly straightforward to me. Any concerns or comments from the committee? Seeing none, can we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that application A 2019-88 be approved without conditions.
Seconder for the motion? Scott. All in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Next application is A2019-089, 19 Netherwood Road. Anyone in support or opposition, please come forward. For the record, can you state your names?
My name is Kyle Ryan.
My name is Aldo Alvarello.
And I see you have a junior member to your team.
Yes, this is Declan Ryan. He's joining me on work today. He's learning how to be a big boy.
Understandable. Have you had an opportunity to read the staff report?
Yes.
Have you any questions or comments, concerns?
Nope.
So you're in support of what staff is recommending?
Yes.
Seeing there is no opposition, I'll pass this off to the committee for comments or concerns. Scott.
Just a question to the applicant, just for clarification. There's a difference between what you've stated in your application as far as the side yard goes. You've got 1.21 meters for your left side yard, and on the sketch it says 1.12. And I'm just wondering which one is correct.
Okay. So that would be, it would be what the existing is, because we're not going any further to the right side of the building. So whatever on the, it says 1.21 meters, so we just made a typo on there. That should say 1.21 meters instead of 1.12.
It is 1.21.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
perfect.
It'll remain the same as the original survey.
Okay.
I have noticed that the building division is looking for application for a building permit, which is conditionally put on these kind of applications. So I'm going to suggest that the one additional condition be to apply for a building permit. Any further comments, questions, motion? Mike.
I'd move for acceptance of this application as submitted.
With the amendment?
Okay. With the amendment for the building permit, yeah.
Seconder? Two seconders. Okay, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next application is A2019-090, 30 to 40 Margaret Avenue. Anyone in support or opposition to this, please?
Mr. Chair, before you proceed, this is an application for which I'm going to declare a conflict. I did some work on this property for Activa some years ago.
Okay. Okay, we have an applicant and some people who are opposed to it. We'll deal with the applicant first. Have you gentlemen read the staff report?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Pierre Chauvin with MHBC Planning, and with me this morning is Paul Britton, my partner. Also in the audience is Mr. Alex Sumner, who's the Director of Site Design with Activa Holdings, our client. We have read the report. We support the recommendation. I just have a few comments I would like to make. We certainly would like to take this opportunity to thank staff. We've been working with them for a number of months now on the site design, the heritage permit, which has received unanimous support by Kitchener Heritage staff. The site plan has received approval in principle, and we're just finalizing some of the detailed design and conditions, one of which is getting approvals for the variance. With respect to the variance, there are two aspects I would like to talk about. One is the number of units, as well as the visitor parking. With respect to the number of units, as the staff report indicated, the number of units that was provided for in the special regulation that applied to these lands was based on a previous concept that helped inform and resolve a previous appeal. Since that time, obviously, Activa has acquired the property, and we've come up with a design that has a few more units. I would consider this variance more of a technical variance in that the reason for the number of units is really divisions of the internal demising walls and the layout of each unit, and effectively actually the number of stories, building height, and floor space ratio we all comply with, and in fact we have a much lower footprint and floor space ratio than what was originally contemplated when that OMB hearing was resolved. With respect to the parking, we have prepared a transportation study which was supported by staff, and a number of, not only for the reduction that we're proposing, on the basis of implementation of TDM measures such as provision of additional bicycle parking and unbundled parking within the proposed underground parking garage, but also on the basis that it is quite walkable to a number of GRT routes, one which runs along the frontage of our property, but also within walking distance to the now running ION. But furthermore, in addition to what we've heard from staff subsequent to our application, our client has agreed to add more visitor parking in the underground parking garage, an addition of 8 visitor parking spaces, which now brings the variance up to 8% as opposed to 6%, which is more in line in keeping with proposed parking standards that are being contemplated through the city. And in fact, I would suggest it's a lot higher than a number of other developments that have been approved throughout the area in the downtown core. So with that, those are my comments. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and perhaps if there are any follow-up comments as a result of the delegations, I can answer those as well. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, we will hear from the adjacent neighbors who have some concerns. If you're speaking, can you please state your name first?
Hi, good morning. I'm grossly hearing impaired. I've tried to follow what's been going on with difficulty. But my concern is with all the extra traffic we're going to get on the street because of the parking situation, that maybe there's going to be a pollution problem. The street is quite wide, but it's a main bus route, and with all the extra traffic it's going to cause on the street, if it stops on the street, we're going to get everybody running their engines on the vehicles, and we're going to get so polluted it's going to be really bad. That is my real concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there more comments from your group?
Yes. My name is Jacob Harms. I own a dwelling on Margaret Avenue, and I'm not opposed or a position, or for or against. Either way, my concern is what the gentleman just stated. The street is not wide enough to accommodate an extra 500 vehicles per day as it sits right now with parking spaces on the side. That's unacceptable because you have the church across the street from my house. There is a bus stop on either side, right at the stoplight. Then you have a summer camp people. They bring in school buses. They stop at the church there. They park on a no parking zone. They stop there to unload and load children. Then you have a driveway space, and then you got parking. There's people parking there all day long, 8 to 10 hours. It says 2-hour parking. Parking enforcement goes in there. I see them quite often. But I believe there are people that work downtown there. And we cannot have a 2-lane street, one way, and then apartment buildings beside. We're right beside apartment buildings on either side, the huge apartment buildings. The big trucks, when they come into, people move in, they park their semi-trucks on the side of the road. The buses have to stop. We can't, there's no way to see. You can't see nothing because everything is blocked. My suggestion, and I have not been consulted earlier, and I don't have a computer, so I don't go online. If they want to put a 234 unit now, so I'm assuming, if I read it correctly, there's commercial space also involved now. None? Okay, then I apologize for that. But it will be at least minimum of 500 vehicles. If each person leaves once in the morning and comes home at night, that's 500 vehicles. With visitors, I don't know how many it's 234 plus visitors, right? Plus people, delivery people, groundskeeping. They park on the side of the road all the time too. There's a fire hydrant. People park in front of the fire hydrant all the time. The center in the square is a block away from the area. Like I welcome a development. There's no question about that. I think it's a good space for a good development project. But the way it sits now with the street traffic, in which this gentleman just stated, there's going to be cars standing there for 2 minutes and idling, trying to get by each other. There's already been honking and I've seen people get out of their cars when there's center in the square parking, trying to people to park. Luckily, that night there was a city parking personnel that had a city vest on. He told that fellow to get back into the car. So it's very congested. And now Weber Street's closed. Heavy traffic's coming off of Weber Street. It's going all down Margaret Avenue. That's a main bus route. And I understand that it's good business to develop. I do. But as it sits right now, a 2-lane road will not suffice. And it's open all the way from the church almost to Victoria Street. There's one house in between, and then there's another Vive, I think, is going to put up another apartment building there. So there will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buildings, commercial or residential, big buildings. So that's going to increase, and I'm assuming that would probably be another 100 units. So now we're talking, with all the traffic, visitors, and everything else coming around, it's going to be over 500 vehicles in and out, in and out. That's my concern. Plus, we have people that have pets. They are using the park right now where they're building where they're going to build the units, and they're already coming on the residential areas. They let their pets come and do their business like 10, 15 feet away from our doors.
Unfortunately, pets are a little outside of the scope of this committee. So, in summary, your major concern is buses and traffic and idling vehicles for a period of time. Thank you. Is there anyone else who has comments from those adjacent neighbors?
Mr. Chairman, could I ask a favor? The four people that are speaking, if they could identify their addresses for me too, that would be much appreciated.
You want my address? My building is 9 Margaret Avenue, and I live right next door to a heritage home. I believe it's the coach house I own in the back. That is, I think it is also part of heritage. I'm not 100% sure, so somebody would have to tell me that whether that is true or not.
Okay, thank you. We have your address. The next person who would like to speak, name and address, please.
Denise Brogy. I own a unit at 43 Margaret Avenue. It's a condo building of 16 units. I do rent it out to my son, though, so I'm more of a visitor. That particular building with 16 units has 3 visitor parking spots, and it's not enough. There have been plenty of times where I've come for a condo meeting, and I haven't been able to park in my own visitor parking. So to have 20, whatever it is, 23 spaces for 234 units, I don't see how that's going to work. And to depend on on-street parking on Margaret, the proximity to Centre and the Square. So many times I go down Margaret, it's all full.
So again, your major concern is traffic and parking. Correct. Is there someone else who would like to speak?
My name's Donna Keel. I'm at 58 Aaron Street, just around the corner from Margaret Avenue. I have 2 concerns, and I'm not opposed to the building itself. I think they put a lot of thought and consideration into consulting with the neighborhood about the look, the size, the positioning. I do also have a concern about trafficking, and partly maybe because there's a lot of construction somewhere right now, excessive traffic going up Yonge Street onto Margaret Avenue, increasing and maybe exacerbating the concerns that they have, and also the curvature of the road on Margaret Avenue just before it reaches Victoria Park. So there is concerns about the traffic, and there are some suggestions that could be done. Parking on street would also be a problem because there's going to be a bicycle lane, a 2-way bicycle lane installed on Yonge Street, so there'll be quite a number of parking spaces lost as a result of that. And that's nothing to do with this new build, but it will just make the parking issue larger as well. My second concern, or actually it was my first one until they started talking about parking, is to do actually with the report itself. I have some logistical questions and a question about accuracy. First of all, on page 2 of the report, number 1, do the variances maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? I noticed that the Heritage Conservation District in which the new building will be located is not even mentioned until the very end of the report, and I wondered why that would be. And also, is a Heritage Conservation District approval for not considered part of the official plan because it was not mentioned in that number 1. And the second point, the first paragraph under point number 1, excuse me, refers to the Central Frederick Neighborhood Secondary Plan. So I question if the first paragraph is correct, or should it just be saying the Civic Center Secondary Plan?
Maybe staff may have an answer to those questions, and maybe some comments from traffic on what the neighbors are seeing or foreseeing. Okay, so there's the two things, comment on which secondary plan and more information on the traffic issue.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, Mrs. Keel's comment about the reference to the secondary plan is correct. It should say the civic district neighborhood secondary plan. With respect to the Heritage Conservation District, I think the report was light on that simply because it's not a heritage matter that we're dealing with. We're dealing just with zoning. There was a separate process that dealt with the heritage matters, and as you heard from the applicant's consultant, it was supported unanimously at a recent Heritage District meeting. And that's why we didn't want to add more content in terms of the heritage, because it really wasn't an issue that we felt the committee had before them today. The issues were strictly zoning related issues, and that's why we stuck to the tests with respect to that. So the report should say Civic Center Neighborhood Plan. And my colleague, Dave Seller, will answer your, or address the questions with respect to the traffic. Yeah.
Mr. Seller.
Through you, Mr. Chair. First off, I just want to say that the submission of the traffic impact study that was submitted, we supported it. The numbers are solid.
Can you speak up, please? I can't hear you.
Can I speak up? Sure. So the first thing that they did, they conducted an existing traffic count in March of 2019 of this year to get existing traffic volumes at the intersection of Margaret Avenue and Maynard. And what they found was in the AM, there was around 400 vehicles in the peak hour, and in the PM, there was around 450. So this is well within the operating of this roadway. And they forecasted those numbers to 2024, including the site traffic and any growth, background growth on the street. And it's roughly 490 in the AM and 560 in the PM. Again, these numbers are within the acceptable capacity of Margaret Ave.
What is the capacity of Margaret Ave?
And the capacity of Margaret Ave is roughly around 5,000 vehicles per day.
Are there any comments or questions from the committee? Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have one question for the applicant to start, then I've got some questions for staff. The 8 additional visitor parking spaces, could you advise where they're going to be located?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair, they are going to be located in the underground parking garage. So you'll have access with a key fob to get inside the parking garage.
Okay. And just a couple quick questions for staff. The existing zoning that's on the site, the height that's being proposed, it's in keeping with that zoning. Like, what would the zoning allow on this site?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't have the regulations in front of me, but I believe Mr. Chauvin mentioned it earlier in his introduction statements. The site-specific zoning on this property was very specific to a previous design that was being contemplated. This particular development does not compromise those regulations, but some of the regulations were so specific to a design that is no longer at the table. Staff have reviewed the site-specific conditions that were set out in the regulations of the existing zoning bylaw, Regulation 551R, and found that this design is in keeping with all of those regulations. There were some specific regulations concerning stepping a building back, if you had a certain portion of the building within a certain distance within the front yard. But this building doesn't even come within that distance of the front yard, therefore it doesn't apply. They have satisfied the intent of those regulations through other design means, including positioning and just through the shape and scale of the building. The building is less massive than it was in the previous design.
If I may, Mr. Chair, just to answer the question, the specific maximum building height in the bylaw is 21.1 meters, and we're at 20.9. And if I also just, Mr. Britton here has something further to respond to with respect to the traffic.
With permission, Mr. Chair, just to make sure that the delegation's comments are specifically addressed. Just big picture in terms of this particular site, it's a vacant, underutilized site within walking distance of the downtown amenities, and with transit immediately adjacent to the property, but also 2 ION sites within 500 meters of the property, and transit located on Victoria Street. So with respect to the comment in terms of pollution, as a broad-based planning theory, the intention is to intensify on these sites in proximity to these sorts of amenities and facilities, with one of the objectives being to reduce pollution. And so I just wanted to lay that out in terms of philosophy. And with respect to Margaret Avenue itself, would note that Margaret Avenue is designated and designed as a collector road. Its intent is to handle the volume of traffic that's anticipated, and that was one of the overriding factors that led to the designation of these lands as medium-rise residential in the first instance. And with respect to the building height, historically the height was 8 stories, and through the process of negotiations through the Heritage District Plan, the height was reduced to 6 stories, and as Mr. Chauvin has noted, there's compliance with the zoning provision in that respect. And then just to round out the answer, one of the requirements of the site plan application was to submit a traffic impact study. The traffic impact study addressed both the capacity of the road, taking into account not only this particular development, but also the VIVE development, to ensure that a comprehensive analysis was done for the anticipated developments on Margaret Avenue, and concluded that the road had sufficient capacity. In fact, road improvements, including left turn lanes, were not warranted. The one area of concern, though, was the alignment of what was previously a driveway that was offset from Maynard Avenue, and through the process, the site plan has been revised to ensure that the proposed driveway is in alignment with Maynard to minimize conflicts on Margaret Avenue. So that was one of the comments that was received and was responded to through the process. And then the final comment would be this application comes to you after extensive neighborhood consultation. There was an informal public information center and a series of meetings with neighbors, the adjacent church, the Church of the Good Shepherd, the owners of 54 Margaret Avenue, property owners on the south side of Margaret Avenue, and all the abutting neighbors along Allen Street. And you'll note, typically in these intensification situations, there's often a huge delegation which appears. When we went to Heritage Committee, the neighborhood actually came out in support of the design, which is, I think, a testament to the consultation process which has taken place. So we would be pleased to, if you have any specific questions, on account of the comments from the other delegations, we would be pleased to answer them if required.
First, Julianne.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo the comments made by Mr. Britton. We went through an extensive public process with this file, knowing that it was a property that had been vacant for a long time, and I think there was some reference made to that people were using it to walk the dogs, although it was private property and it's not a park. It was always intended for development and redevelopment. But noting that, we went out to the community, had a neighborhood information meeting, and there were about, I would say, close to 50 people at least in attendance. And I think through all the consultation that happened after that neighborhood information between the applicant and their consultants and the neighborhood residents, I think is a testimony to how much commitment there is to try and do a good job in this community. And I think a lot of it has been addressed through the redesign of this site.
Thank you. And as you know, I'm a big supporter of community engagement. Scott, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I just had a couple more questions for staff, just for clarification. The way I read the report, the requested parking ratio overall would be consistent with the new zoning bylaw if it were in full force and effect. It's not, but it would be, correct? So the way I see on page numbers are not here, but the new zoning bylaw requires 1.1 space per unit. The applicant is proposing 1.12. If the new zoning bylaw was in effect, that variance would not be necessary.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then a follow-up, the way I read the new zoning bylaw requiring only 10% for visitor parking, if it were in effect, it would be requiring 30 spaces, not the 59. It still would require a variance, but it would be 30 in lieu, or 24 in lieu of 30, correct?
That's correct, because I mean we're going to 8% and not 10% of visitor parking.
Yeah. I have a few comments, Mr. Chair, but
if you have some comments, go ahead and comment.
First of all, I want to explain to the residents why I'm going to support this application. First of all, I'm very sympathetic to your issues. I've been in this business for 35 years, and change is very, very difficult. Obviously, and I want to comment to staff too that this is a very, very good staff report. Please pass on my appreciation to Mr. Bateman. It was very thorough. What we're seeing in front of us here is a development that obviously has a long history, but it's fully supported in terms of use in the zoning. It does require a couple of variances, but in the staff report I'm reading that it's received approval in principle at a site plan level. What that means to me is staff have looked at it and they believe it's going to be fully functional. So I have to support that. As far as the heritage goes, one of my portfolios in my previous life was heritage in Oakville, and I'm really interested to see that you are involved in a heritage conservation district, and that's a very difficult process to go through. And the applicant has, in fact, received approval from the committee, which tells me again that this is a very good development. It has to get approval from council, obviously, but it's received approval from the Heritage Committee. So again, I'm sympathetic to your concerns because change is difficult, but I fully believe this is a tremendous development, fully functional, supported by the use in the zoning bylaw, and where the province and the City Council wants to go. So, Mr. Chairman, I would be prepared to fully support the staff recommendation as written.
Do you have any comments?
Was that the motion?
I would make that a motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay, seconder. Okay, before we put it to a vote, I'm going to say I agree with my colleagues. This is a very well thought out a development on a piece of property that's been vacant for decades. I appreciate staff and the applicant engaging in the neighborhood with meetings and discussions. It always works better when you do that, my personal experience. Thank you to you folks for coming out today and making your concerns known. Most of them, I think, have been addressed through the traffic studies and minor changes to the development as it moved along. So those are my comments. We have a motion on the floor that has been seconded, so all in favor? Carried.
Thank you very much.
Next application is B2019-055-119 Waterloo Street, which is a severance. Anyone in support or opposition, please come forward. I see we have an applicant, but no opposition. So please, for the record, state your names.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. My name is Raj Rai.
Okay.
Good morning, all. My name is Raj Marva.
Okay. Have you read the staff report on this application?
Yes, sir, we did.
Any questions, concerns?
No, we agree with that.
Does the committee have any questions, concerns, comments?
Sorry, through you, the chair. I need one small thing, if you wouldn't mind. Condition 3 only provides me with one reference plan, and I would require 2, if that's okay. Condition 3 only has one reference plan, and I need 2. Sorry, just for the file.
Sorry, I missed that.
Condition number 3, that notes reference plans.
Yeah.
It says 1, and I need 2. So it's minor, but I just need a second one. I know.
Okay.
Okay. Do you see condition 3?
Condition 3?
Yes. That requires the applicant to provide me with a reference plan,
Yes.
but I need 2 copies of it, not 1.
Okay, so we will modify the conditions to include 2 copies under recommendation
I see 2.
number 3. Someone have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I will move that this application B 2019-055 be approved, subject to the conditions set out in the staff report as amended.
We have a seconder for that? Scott? Okay, all in favor? Carried.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Next application is B2019-056, 1000 Victoria Street North. Anyone in support or opposition, please come forward. The last one. Okay, got it. For the record, can you please state your name?
Felice Tamer. I'm representing, I'm from Dillon Consulting, and I'm representing TDL on behalf of the landowner and the consent application for a lease greater than 21 years. I'm in support of the staff report. The application is administrative and relates to a lease extension agreement between the landlord and TDL. There's no, the application is technical in nature and doesn't speak to the site's operations.
Thank you. I agree. This is fairly straightforward. Just a lease extension. There's 3 conditions as in the staff report. Does the committee have any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, does someone want to bring forward a motion? Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will move that application B 2019-056 be approved, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report.
Can we have a seconder for that, Mike? All in favor? Okay.
Thank you.
That's passed, and I hope to see Tim Hortons out there for the next 21 years. Can I find Tim Hortons? Next application is variance and severance for 45 and 47 Heman Street. I think that's how it's pronounced. It's application A2019-091 and B2019-057. Anyone in support or opposition, please come forward.
Thank you. Your Honor, my name is Neil Kraishnik, and I'm representing my own company. And I don't have very much experience about this, but anyway, as you see, I'm applying to sever this property in 2 lots.
Okay. I understand the severance issue. The lot width variance I consider minor. Again, just a couple of inches. Now, staff would like to modify the list of conditions, which would be, which one is it you want? Number 3, as that the owner provide 2 copies of a digital file. Paper copy? Well, no. Provide a digital and deposit reference and a full-size, two full-size paper copies. Is that what you're asking for? Okay. I consider this very straightforward. Is there a motion? Or are there questions, comments from the committee?
I did at first look at the configuration and, creating 2 lots that were of kind of strange shapes, but then acknowledging that it is a parallelogram to start with, and the intent is to have the semi-parallel to the street, to Hyman Street, and of course it's already under construction. So my concerns were alleviated after considering all of those factors, such that I'm prepared to move that the application be approved subject to the conditions set out in the staff report as amended.
Is there a seconder for that? That's been seconded. All in favor?
Thank you, Your Honor.
That's carried. And that concludes our agenda for the day. Motion to adjourn. Seconded. Approved. Thank you very much.